Ink-a-dink, 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 ink-a-dink. Wow!
Okay, are you sure you want to remain unmasked? Okay, because we're going to start up taping in a very short time. So I really, if you feel comfortable without, I understand it's not a hoodie. I understand that cats do not wear hoodies. When cats go out, they go out in full regalia. Now, you want to talk about that evening again? Because I just have a feeling that there's something you're holding back. And now that we're doing our Sunday morning show, we probably want to talk about what happened in Sanford, Florida. We tend to do our Sunday... Oh. Welcome to Basil BuddhaCat Presents. My name is David Stevenson. I'm Basil's co-host, interpreter, and gopher, if you will. In the center slot, Basil BuddhaCat. And we have guests tonight from the outer universe, the Buddha, and from Sanford, Florida, another cat by the name of Basil, as it turns out. Now, from previous shows, you'll look back and you'll know that Basil had a very interesting arrangement in Sanford, Florida, in that he actually is a member of... He's not sure if this will continue now that the word is out of his knowledge of the situation, but he's a member of both George Zimmerman's household and Trayvon Martin's dad's household in Sanford, Florida. Same neighborhood. And Basil, as it turns out, our guest, as it turns out, lived in George Zimmerman's household for a number of years, and circumstances would have it, he went out for the cat door one day and couldn't get back in. So what he ended up doing is traveling a bit around the neighborhood and ended up at the house of Trayvon Martin's dad. He was invited in, adopted. They thought that he, in fact, had no family prior to. Nobody put a note out looking for him, to their knowledge. So they ended up adopting him. And unbeknownst to them, he also was a member of the Zimmerman family. And unbeknown to the Zimmerman family, he was also a member of the Martin family. So he had kind of a unique perspective, definitely a unique perspective about life in Sanford, Florida through his travels. He described in previous shows the family dynamics of both families as being very regular, normal family dynamics, nothing out of the ordinary, to his knowledge and from talking with his other friends, the other cats in Sanford, really, in fact, it's just two very normal, everyday families relative to his experience and the experiences of other cats who he's had chance over the years to discuss with. And correct me if I'm wrong, Basil, because I want to make sure I get these facts straight. And I'm sure Basil, actually, our host, Basil, will want to step in and speak a little bit to this, because he says I've got it pretty accurate when it comes to what Basil, our guest, has spoken about, but he wants it known that he doesn't have that same type of experience as our guest Basil, in that our Basil, the host of the show, Basil BuddhaCat, host of Basil BuddhaCat Presents, which you're watching, he says that he knows of a family that, in fact, is pretty crazy, pretty crazed. And in fact, beckoning back to Friday night show where we had a call in from good friend Lara Skye, who called into Basil's show Friday evening, and got into a nice discussion with both Basil and the guest Basil and the guest Buddha. Had a nice conversation with us about a lot of things, including growing herbs in the garden. Lara, as you know from Friday night's show, Lara does an article for the Bethel Patch, about a weekly article about herbs. And it's quite interesting that she talks about herbs and the notion of families growing herbs in their garden to take care of their nutritional needs in cooking, take care of their cooking needs. And Basil and I read her article religiously, if I may. We like what she has to say. We know from knowing Lara for quite some time that myself for about 2 years now, almost 2 years. And actually just about, it's March, so yeah, 2 years I've known her. And Basil's known her since he moved in with me, since he and Kristen moved in with me in June of 2011. Basil knows that Lara's good people, and he doesn't often make that recommendation about people. Oh, that's the point you're getting at. If I'll just be quiet and listen, he says. The point he's making, that in his experience, he's known some people that, counter to what our guest Basil is saying about families in Sanford, Florida, Basil says he knows a family very intimately that are not, you're not, oh, come on now, that's not fair. You're not talking about your family, about Kristen and I and Lilith. So yeah, that's exactly who I'm talking about. Basil says that his family, Kristen and David and Lilith, are a little bit on the wacky side, he says. He says that, you know, they're not wacky like you would be worried about them doing anything nefarious or anything cruel. Or he says his family are good people, but they're just crazed. Now, I'm not sure, without Lara on the phone here to defend herself, if you should be, you know, he says, oh, he's got no problem with Lara. He thinks Lara's as normal as they come. Even, okay, even, you know that I refer to Lara as my, as my guru. Yeah, you know that. Okay, he says, yeah, he knows that. And she calls me Wizzy, because I'm her wizard. But, so, do you want to talk about your family, Basil? Do you want, now what kind of conversations do you have with other cats and with other animals? Now, when you lived on the farm in Richfield, on the farm with Kristen, you had, you know, conversations, because Kristen would occasionally bring some of the smaller animals from the farm up into the room. She had Basil's told me about his visits from Chookie, the pig. When Chookie was a lot smaller. Chookie's pretty good size now, but when Chookie was just a little piglet, Kristen would bring him up into the room, bring her up into the room, and Basil got to know her a little bit. Now, what about the other animals on the farm? I know, because I'm not sure if you had much of a chance to meet any of the horses on the farm. You met Chookie, or as she's also known, Trixie. You met Trixie's mom, Alice. You probably didn't meet. You met a couple of the dogs. Yeah, because of the dogs, the 3 dogs that lived there. Yeah, you met them. Didn't meet any of the horses, because none of them would venture up the stairs to Kristen's apartment. But what exactly are you getting at, Basil? I mean, you're talking about humans, and you're kind of countering what our guest Basil has to say. But I really want to spend some time talking about our guest Basil's experience in Sanford, Florida, with the two families, and shed a little bit more light as he's explained that the two. No, you want to explain it? Okay, go ahead. Okay. Basil's saying that I've got it right, that Basil from Florida, our guest, lived with two fairly normal households, apparently. But he says there's something about Florida that doesn't quite sit well with him. He's starting to wonder a little bit about a state that would pass a law that would allow one individual to shoot another individual based on being worried about them, being worried about not their behavior, but their being concerned about how they look to them. That they frighten them, they can go ahead and shoot. Basil's concerned about that because he says, hey, if it can happen to people, if people can go around shooting other people based on just a bad feeling about them, just a concern about them, feeling threatened by them, then what's going to happen to cats? Do you really think anybody's going to shoot a cat? Basil says the reason why he brought this up, specifically this notion about shooting cats, is he still got it in the back of his mind, and apparently he's still got it on the back of his neck. He's being scratched from behind by former guest to the show, Sarah Palin. And I'm going to see if I can get Sarah back on the phone because I think I know where you're going with this, because you had that conversation with former Governor Sarah Palin. You had a conversation. Oh, you want to move away? Okay, that's fine. You had a conversation with former Governor Sarah Palin about her penchant for shooting wolves from helicopters and from planes, doing target practice on wolves, and of course Basil being a devout Christian as well as a Buddhist, a Christian religiously and a Buddhist philosophically, as I am also. Basil is concerned for all God's creatures, he says. He's saying Basil even sometimes feels a bit of remorse when he kills a mouse. Really? He says, yeah. He feels it. He feels some remorse, and the only time he kills is either for food or to make his people think that he's trying to impress them, that he's trying to do a little song and dance for them, so that oh, okay, so that's why you did that for Kristen and I. You would bring a mouse home to try to convince us, to keep us thinking that you're out to impress us somehow. He says, yeah, that's right. Basil, our guest Basil, has something to say about that. He's okay. He's going to have to. He speaks to get Basil, the host, and Basil BuddhaCat, the host, interprets for me, and then I can interpret for both the audience and for former Governor Palin. He's making a note, and he mentioned in Friday night's show that he was, in fact, out catting. Nothing to do with Satin Doll, by the way. He says he's not even a Duke Ellington fan. But he says he was out catting the night that the tragedy took place, and would have been able to see the entire set of events unfold, the entire series of events unfold, if not for the fact that he got distracted by a mouse and went chasing after the mouse. Okay. Now, here's a question for you, Basil. It's our guest, Basil. Here's a question for you. When you caught the mouse, would you have brought it home? Which household would you have brought it home to? Because if you remember from Friday night, if you recall from Friday night, if you were watching the show, that Basil, our guest, is a member of both the Zimmerman household and the Martin household. He had been living for a number of years with the Zimmerman family. Went out the cat door one day, couldn't get back in, it jammed. He ended up at the Martin household, was adopted by them. And this is Trayvon Martin's dad's household. And he says it's not a very fair question to ask. First of all, he didn't catch the mouse. He got distracted by what? He says he found a garden. And in fact, it might have been Lara Skye's garden because there was some catnip in it and a number of other herbs. It was principally an herb garden, he says. Now, sorry to disappoint you on that, but Lara lives here in Bethel. She doesn't live in Sanford, Florida, so that couldn't have been her, but it was obviously might have been someone that had read her article in the Bethel in the Bethel Patch and knew a little something about herb gardening and was inspired by Lara to grow some herbs. Says, could be. Okay, so back onto our principal subject. Oh, geez, now Governor Palin wants to say something. She says that she has more than just a fleeing purpose in shooting wolves from helicopters and from planes. Basil's, I'm not sure whether we should allow you to continue on this line because Basil's whiskers are twitching. He's not real happy with the whole notion of shooting wolves from helicopters. Okay, Governor Palin, you're very soft. Let me dial you back up here. Okay. Now, Basil's still a little skeevish about it, and he apparently will continue to be very skeevish about the notion of shooting wolves from helicopters because he views wolves as being God's creatures and not deserving of being shot, particularly for sport. Okay, Governor Palin is reminding us that it's not only for sport that she shoots wolves from helicopters and from planes. She says she also shoots them, has them packaged up and sent down to Texas, where, if you recall, we also spoke with Governor Perry through the primaries a little bit, and Governor Perry was quite proud of the fact that he was out walking his dog one morning, carrying his gun, which he always likes to carry, and one morning he shot a coyote. And Governor Palin was quite intrigued by this, so she decided that what she would do is when she killed wolves, she would have them packaged up, sent down to Texas, and hung up along the route that Governor Perry walks his dog, so that if there are no coyotes available, that he certainly wouldn't be missing the opportunity to get some good target practice. And then Basil is very upset with you about that. Doesn't want to talk about it anymore. Governor Palin, I think, look, I don't think you're going to get anywhere with Basil by doing the continuous wink. I don't think. Matter of fact, I think I better turn you away from Basil a little bit. Okay. Basil says he's pretty upset about the whole thing, and even though you've been scratching the back of his head through part of the show, that's not going to do it for him. He's just not the least bit interested. Okay, Governor Palin, we're going to have to check off with you because we want to continue the discussion with. Okay, yes, we also have another call coming in. Hold on. Thank you, Governor Palin. Okay, Basil, I'm going to let her go back there and scratch your. Basil BuddhaCat presents. Basil, it's Governor Rick Perry again. Yes, Governor Perry. Yes. Yeah, we know you. You're probably listening in on a party line with Governor Palin as we spoke, but she's not here, so I'm sorry you can't thank her for sending the wolves down, because she's incommunicado on the show now. No, incommunicado is not. No, it's neither a fruit nor a vegetable. Sorry, no. Governor Perry is quite proud of the fact that he speaks un pequeño de español, as he says it. No, it's incommunicado. She's not within speaking or hearing range of us right this minute. So you can't thank her. You'll have to give her a personal call. You'll have to send her back a couple of wolf steaks. You don't. Basil, I'm sorry, but the Governor Perry says that when he takes target practice on the wolves, they're already half rotten. Okay, what's that? Okay, hold on. I'm going to put you on hold for a moment. Okay. Basil, our guest from Florida, is telling us that that he's becoming more and more convinced that the two families that he's principally close to, and that would be the Zimmerman family and the Martin family, are in fact exemplary American families relative to some of this nonsense that he's hearing about from Sarah Palin and from Rick Perry and from and some of the folks that Basil's alluded to. But that's back to the discussion. Okay, now you had mentioned that you saw the moment. You were there watching when Mr. Zimmerman and and young Trevor Martin ran into each other and made contact with one another on the street in the neighborhood. And you tell us you were distracted at that point by the mouse that you chased. Did you think about going back to observe any more of the discussion? Was there anything that you heard initially that made you think that there would be any kind of anything other than two people walking in opposite directions on an evening in a neighborhood? He's thinking. He says he's thinking about it, but nothing, up until that point, nothing really caught his eye or his ear about the discussion or about the just kind of a hey, how you doing kind of observation from. Now, who spoke first? I mean, did you note who extended the hello first? Was it Trevor Martin or was it George Zimmerman? He says it was George Zimmerman actually that said hello first. He says Trevor Martin responded in kind with a hello. He did note, now that he's thinking about it, that Mr. Zimmerman kind of, is that how you would describe it? Is that really how you feel it took place? Okay, yeah. Okay, he says that Mr. Zimmerman did appear to make a move with his hand to make it very clear to Trayvon Martin that he had a gun in the belt of his pants. Would you say that's completely accurate? Are you not mistaken at all about? Did you see any intent on Mr. Martin's part to Mr. Zimmerman's part to show the weapon off? Did you see any intent in that? Our guest Basil says he thinks so, but he's not sure. I mean, he he knew both of them pretty well. He saw Trevon Martin every time Trevon came to visit his dad in Sanford. And, of course, he lived half the time with the Zimmermans. So he's pretty sure. He's not real keen on the body language of humans. But he kind of got the feeling that Mr. Zimmerman, for reason or reasons unknown, was making a careful note of the fact that he had a gun in his belt to Trevon Martin. Okay. Well, that's something that I'm sure you'll be called to discuss. Basil, our guest Basil, is quite certain that he will be called. He will be summoned before the grand jury, probably the federal grand jury first. He says, because the state and the local law enforcement are looking at this very not as deeply and not as thoroughly as it looks like the federal law enforcement is going to be. Guess Basil? Basil says this has been one of the most thoroughly non-engrossing conversations, and he's really starting to get ticked at Sarah Palin, who is putting one finger behind Basil's left ear. What do you mean? He says he thinks she's kind of poking him behind the ear in such a way that her fingertip feels like the barrel of a gun. Okay, Basil, I can take care of that. Okay, not there anymore. Okay, that's enough of that. Any closing comments, anyone? Okay, the Buddha says we need to know that the Dalai Lama is coming to Danbury in later this year, I believe in October, to visit, and they'll be at Western Connecticut State University. It's important to note that, and that people should make every effort to listen to the Dalai Lama and hear some of the wisdom he has to impart on the rest of it. And with that, this has been Basil BuddhaCat Presents, and myself, I'm David Stevenson, co-host, Basil BuddhaCat, host, and our two guests this evening, Basil from Sanford, Florida, and also the Buddha from the outer reaches of the universe. Thanks. Good night. Oh, I'm sorry. Good day. Enjoy your Sunday.
They say they'd rob your grandma blind on Wall Street, on Wall Street. Fritter her away her Medicare on Wall Street. And Pharma Oil and their pet fox don't care if she lives in a box, so long as they wear platinum jocks on Wall Street, on Wall Street. Meow.